Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. The headlines. An escalating trade war. U.S. President Donald Trump pushes for a new tariff strategy, threatening global supply chains and impacting the Philippines. Election scam alert. The Commission on Elections warns against fraudsters, claiming they can rig the 2025 polls for a price. Duterte versus Marcos. Former President Rodrigo Duterte repeats his claims that President Bongbong Marcos is a drug addict. How is Malacañang responding? These stories and more coming up. First, let's take a look at how financial markets performed overnight. The S&P 500 closed higher Thursday, boosted by gains in Nvidia, Apple, and Tesla. Stocks also climbed after new data showed U.S. producer prices rose in January, but key measures of core inflation, closely watched by the Federal Reserve, remained stable or declined.
Markets today are being moved by the same force they have been since Donald Trump took office. That's Donald Trump. Today, it's the fact that Donald Trump hasn't really said much other than maybe there'll be some tariffs coming, and we've seen that before. And it's been back to business as usual for the most of the major names that you've seen, which is earnings have been relatively stable to good.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 0.8%, the S&P 500 higher by 1%, and the Nasdaq up by 1.5%. Over in Europe, equity markets over there, we're seeing a mixed picture. The UK's FTSE 100 higher by 0.5%, Germany's DAX sharply higher, up by 2.1%, and France's CAC 40 up by 1.5%. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump takes a tougher stance on global trade, pushing for reciprocal tariffs to match duties imposed on U.S. exports. Trump orders his economic team to devise a plan, a new tariff strategy, raising the risk of a trade war that could affect global supply chains, including the Philippines. The U.S. move could impact key trading partners, including China, Japan, South Korea, and the European Union, potentially affecting Asian exports and manufacturing sectors. Local economists warn that trade uncertainty could impact Philippine exports, particularly in electronics, auto parts, and manufacturing supplies sent to the U.S. and to China.
The EU's been very nasty. It's just been, they haven't treated us properly. Look, we were great to them on NATO. Essentially, it's a similar group of countries. When I came in, my first term, I raised their fees. I mean, they were not paying. We were paying for, in my opinion, almost all of NATO. And now, you know, I had the bad moment with the press where the press said, well, does this mean you won't protect him? And I said, I won't protect him if they're not paying. But because I said that, the Secretary General, as you know, said it was the greatest thing he's ever seen because the money came pouring in. But they don't treat us right on trade. They don't treat us right on the military either. I mean,
The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas holds interest rates steady but hints at possible cuts soon, raising hopes for lower loan and credit card rates. But the big question is, when will borrowing costs actually come down? Sujin Kim reports.
In the first monetary policy meeting of the year, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas kept its benchmark interest rate at 5.75%, maintaining levels set in December. Overnight deposit and lending rates also remain steady at 5.25 and 6.25%. The Monetary Board noted that inflation forecasts remain largely in line with previous estimates. The risk-adjusted inflation forecast for 2025 was slightly raised at 3.5% from 3.4%, while the 2026 forecast remains at 3.7%. BSP Governor Eli Remolona Jr. says inflation risks have become more balanced, with higher utility costs pushing inflation up, while lower rice tariffs could ease price pressures. BSP Deputy Governor Francisco Daquila Jr. says inflation is expected to moderate next year.
We are seeing that inflation will go back to the midpoint of the target band in 2026, and that comes on the back of a decline in oil prices as the market remains in backwardation.
While domestic growth remains firm, the BSP flagged increasing uncertainty from global trade policies, particularly in the U.S., as a concern.
Normally, we would have cut further, but something has changed. The thing that has changed is the uncertainty over what's going on globally, especially the uncertainty over trade policy. But there are other sources of uncertainty, and we're not quite comfortable with evaluating the impact of that.
Despite holding rates steady, the BSP reaffirmed its stance in an easing cycle, signaling possible rate cuts in future policy meetings.
We're still in the easing cycle, so we're still not thinking about raising rates. So for now, the issue is when do we actually ease in terms of moving the policy rate down. We have, I think we have 5 more meetings this year. So in some of those meetings, we'll probably be easing.
BSP Governor Remolona maintains that a total 50 basis point cut for the year is still on the table. Another key policy move under discussion, a reduction in the reserve requirement ratio, possibly happening sooner than mid-year.
We will likely reduce it from 7% to 5%. The timing is still under discussion, but I think it will be fairly soon, maybe sooner than the middle of the year.
Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
For more on the BSP's latest move and what it means for interest rates, markets, and the economy, we're joined by ATR Asset Management Group's Head of Macroeconomics and Sustainability Research, Jomar Lacson. Hi, Jomar. Thanks for being here with us this morning.
Hi, Maiki. Thank you.
Okay, so Jomar, the BSP decided to keep rates steady. How surprised were you by this move?
Well, the market was already anticipating a cut, and so were we. And it's because the communication ahead already been that the cut would be was sort of imminent. So it was a surprise for the market. But I think with the presentation, with the briefing, it was explained what has changed.
Right. It's the Trump risk premium. It's the external factors, and they just wanted to take a prudent stance. What does this tell you about the situation?
Well, it's understandable if you think about it, because the main issue here really is the change in the trade policy of the U.S. And it was mentioned in the briefing that if you think about it, tariffs have been coming down for the past 60 years. So most of the models we have with respect to inflation forecasts are based on that trend. So the change in the trade policy now begins at that sort of a dynamic interchange, meaning the U.S. raises tariffs, will the other countries raise their tariffs, and what's the response? So now we have this sort of game. And what that means is that the models that we're using right now to predict prices or inflation may not be reliable.
Yeah, your job just got even more difficult. Right. But at the same time, we're still in an easing cycle. BSP Governor Eli Remolona said that a 50 basis point cut for the balance of the year is still on the table. It's just the timing that they need to figure out. And there are perhaps maybe 5 more meetings until the end of the year. All right. What do you think, what are the biggest risks locally?
Well, it's actually most of our risks, I think, is really external. And that's why we're also watching what's happening in the U.S. and, of course, how countries will respond in kind. And,
so wait and see.
Yeah, but the effect there is really, the transmission is really through our exchange rate. So that's the most important part in how it sort of like affects our business costs. So one of the things that we're kind of I would say this, the things that have changed, and I think this kind of matters to the central bank, is our dollar reserves had peaked in October around $112 billion. I think the latest report is about 103. So that's like a $9 billion decline for the past 3 months. So,
What does this tell you?
well, it's a significant change. And if you look at our economic history since the 1960s, whenever our reserves are kind of volatile, that actually spells a bit of a concern. That this is the uncertainty that we're talking about. And I think it's just prudent for the central bank to hold off on the rates. And because what the reserves are very important to maintain our, our credit ratings. So it is, I think it's just by maintaining the rates, they are able to signal to the market that we are keeping everything stable at this point. And let's see where things evolve. Because if things, if the trade war, we don't know. Again, we don't know how it will, and if it results in let's say a trade deficit expansion, which we already have, it expands further, then we'll need the strength of our dollar reserves.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's important to be a bit defensive, a bit more prudent at this stage.
Going back to interest rates, we're still, the country is still expecting a cut of 50 basis points. How important is this reduction in interest rates to the economy now, given that we missed the growth target in 2024?
Yeah. So for us, it's very important because coming from the lockdowns, we've already mentioned this in the past about economic scarring. So those scars are, for that to heal, we need to start investing, for capacity expansion. If we don't do that, then that actually creates more strategic issues. That's why interest rates have to come down, allow companies to refinance and stop and shift from financial management, meaning making sure their balance sheets are actually quite stable, to now expanding the balance sheets.
Catalyst for growth.
Yeah. So we need to look at growth already but as long as interest rates are at these levels, we'll always be in that cautious optimism phase.
Right.
What we need to have is just take out the caution and put in optimism.
Yeah, we just need the optimism. Speaking of optimism, with a strong catalyst, stocks can outperform. Look at the shares of Jollibee yesterday. They jumped 11% after its foreign ownership limit was lifted. What does this tell you?
Well, it's really specific to Jollibee. The markets themselves are still waiting on macro indicators. So just taking it specific to Jollibee, it begs the question: why would you want to remove your limit unless it's a constraint?
That's an interesting question. Was the limit even an issue? Was it necessary? Right? How close did they ever get to hitting that ceiling that the cap needed to be lifted?
Well, from our discussions, trying to recall, I think the maximum was around 30% for Jollibee. So, unlike in the past, when you had the likes of
PLDT, Ayala.
Yeah, wherein we had a discussion on voting preferred shares and everything like that. But the point is, those were the stocks that actually had issues with the foreign ownership, foreign ownership.
Maybe
limit.
they're just preparing for better times ahead. And do you think other companies will follow suit?
Well, I think we've already lifted a lot of restrictions. We just had the public service app. I think so. We've already lifted foreign ownership limits for specific industries such as energy. So I think that's it. The regulatory component is already supportive of additional FDI coming here into the Philippines, and of course portfolio inflows.
And that's what's missing in our equation, FDI inflows. What's it going to take what's it going to take to bring the foreigners back into our market, Jomar?
I think it's still going to be growth. Just going back to Jollibee, we'll have to wait until the fourth quarter earnings start coming in, and it will validate whether, during a period of, in the fourth quarter, we had 6 typhoons in a month. So did that have an impact on growth? Clearly, the GDP number said yes.
Yeah, 5.6%, below the government's 6 to 6.5% target.
Right.
What's your take on where we're headed? What's your take on the Q4 earnings in 2024, and what's your take on where we're headed for 2025, given that it's an election year?
Yeah. So we think that the team, Atram Equities team, is very optimistic about the earnings outlook. Primarily because we believe that consumption will continue. I mean, remember, we are a very strong domestic-driven economy, right? And we think the outlook is for 11% earnings growth for the market. Now, the main sectors that I think that the team thinks will be positive are the banks, primarily because of the interest rates. Banks that tend to benefit from high interest rates, and as we maintain interest rates at these levels, they should
more
benefit
borrowers.
more.
Yes, they should benefit from that. Okay, because it's Valentine's Day, I want to ask you a Valentine's themed question, which is a little hard to ask given your area of expertise. But how about this? Valentine's Day is a major spending event in the Philippines. Over 70% celebrate, and nearly 90% buy gifts. So it's
Right.
nice. I mean, after Christmas, it's a nice consumer spending event. Is this a true reflection of consumer confidence, the activity that we see on Valentine's Day, or is this just an emotionally resilient, activity?
We'll actually find out a bit. To my mind, it never gets reported in actually earnings for retail companies or for major factors. Of course, Christmas. You can see that drive sales strongly. So on Valentine's, not so much. But having said that, we know that malls are going to be full, and this drives mall revenues because some of the malls actually their leases are actually derived from sales. So we'll see probably some of the property companies that have strong, large exposures to retail benefit from that. So on Valentine's, I guess. Oh, speaking of which, it's on in terms of what benefits. There are actually some business models that do benefit. I mean, you'll see in the sales, like if you look at Warren Buffett, right? One of the key companies that he invests in is See's candies, which are very expensive, right? But on Valentine's Day, that's when they really make,
all those resilient emotional expenses
Right.
that drive companies like See's Candies.
Yeah, flowers, for example.
Yeah,
and also-
flowers, food and beverage, all are gonna, get that gain on this day.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you so much, Jomar Lacson from Atram, for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you, Maggie.
All right, we're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line.
As everyone has been so inspired by him on and off the court, so it's kind of like when he said in his interview that one of his inspirations was me. He said it in an interview.
Yes,
like
he did.
He keeps inspired by being an inspiration to others, and that's what kind of like also what I want to be to others. Like. And his, I think his relentlessness in terms of pursuing excellence in doing whatever, basketball or even outside the court, life in general, being the best that you can be, you want to be in your life. It will always hold a special place in my heart. That kind of motivates me in doing what I want.
Welcome back. Trading at the Philippine Stock Exchange opened earlier. Let's take a look at the initial figures. As of 9:20 this morning, the main gauge is trading sideways with a downward bias, lower by 0.1% to 61.06. This after rising 1.14% yesterday to 61.13 in a broad-based rally, which saw big gains in the industrial, holding, services, and mining and oil counters. Right now, it looks like the market investors are taking a bit of a breather. We're seeing a mixed picture here. All shares index is trading sideways with a slight upward bias, up by 0.1%. The financials, industrial, and mining and oil counters are in the green, with the mining and oil counter sharply in the green early in this session, higher by 2.6%. So that's something to note. Whereas the holding firms, services, and property counters are, taking the market a bit lower, down by less than 1% for each of them. Now, at the foreign exchange market, the peso opens at 57.95 against the greenback from its previous close of 58.06. Now, it's a big win for Bilyonaryo Tony Tangcatyong. The Philippine Stock Exchange approves Jollibee's request to remove the 40% foreign ownership limit, and investors cheered that. Jollibee's shares surged 11% yesterday following that announcement, as more foreign buyers can now invest in the fast food giant. To make this happen, Jollibee amended its articles of incorporation, removing rules that allowed it to own or mortgage land, which previously restricted foreign ownership. This move makes Jollibee more attractive to foreign investors, increases market liquidity, and strengthens its global expansion plans. This doesn't just benefit Jollibee, it also shows that the Philippines is opening up to more foreign investments. Now, the Commission on Elections sounds the alarm over scammers claiming that they can rig the 2025 midterm elections by falsely touting connections with the poll body. The COMELEC dismisses these claims as fraudulent, urging candidates and voters to stay vigilant against these election-related scams. Hannah T. reports.
Wala pong intervention, walang human intervention, ni walang hawak, ni walang typing. Mula sa presinto, itatransmit electronically ang result.
Just like a text message, once sent, it cannot be altered. This is COMELEC Chairman George Garcia's assurance on the integrity of election results, amid reports of sure win deals being offered to candidates. With the help of the Philippine National Police, the COMELEC is monitoring 7 suspects, 2 in Mindanao and 5 in Metro Manila. Among them is a former COMELEC employee assigned to the Election Contest and Adjudication Department 17 years ago, and a former state university official. These schemes involve false claims and extortion.
Kinukuhanan lang po kayo ng pera. Ang ginagawa nila, yung magkakalaban pinupuntahan. Sinabi, galing kami doon sa kalaban ninyo. Yung kalaban naman, yung nga pong kabila, nag-o-offer din para sa amin. Lahat pinupuntahan.
Unlike previous automated polls, the midterm elections will use an upgraded voting system with new machines provided by South Korean firm Miro Systems. These machines promise faster processing times and more accurate transmission of results. Media outlets and watchdogs will also be provided with their own dedicated servers to access election data. The COMELEC adds, results will also be uploaded real-time to the COMELEC website. Garcia was also quick to deny claims of pre-shaded ballots in the upcoming midterm polls. He said the ballots are security printed and cannot be altered without detection. Each is unique and can only be used by the voter registered in the precinct. 3 individuals were recently arrested for demanding 90 million pesos from local aspirants in Cagayan province. They claimed they were IT specialists affiliated with the COMELEC. Garcia appealed to candidates to refuse to engage with such individuals, especially if they have been approached before.
Pakipa-arrest nyo na po kaagad kung kinakailang kahit kayo yung mga naglipanan na ganyan.
The COMELEC also issued an urgent memorandum warning the public not to transact with an individual named Maria Christine Evelyn Tabiliran, who is not connected to the commission. Tabiliran is allegedly using the name of the COMELEC to offer her services to guarantee election victories in exchange for money. The public is urged to report any dealings with her or similar individuals to authorities. Hannah T., Bilyonaryo News Channel.
U.S. President Donald Trump says Ukraine will be included in peace talks with Russia, a move that could change global alliances and the power balance. This comes after Kiev and its European allies warned of a possible dirty deal between Washington and Moscow, following Trump's call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump says he trusts Putin and wants Russia back in the Group of Seven, which could shift how Western countries approach the war. For the Philippines, closer U.S.-Russia ties could affect regional security, global trade, and diplomatic relations, potentially impacting energy prices and foreign policy decisions. Now, elsewhere in the world, a broken water pipe and years of neglect turn a Havana street into an unlikely mini banana plantation, a symbol of Cuba's struggling infrastructure, but also a story of resilience. The pipe burst 3 years ago, and while authorities fixed it, they never repaved the damaged road. Locals believe that rain floods may have deposited banana seeds into the unrepaired pothole. But instead of letting it go to waste, a neighborhood couple has taken it upon themselves to care for the banana plants, proving that even in the most unexpected places, life finds a way. On this Valentine's Day, this story reminds us that love and care, even for a few banana trees, can turn any situation into something meaningful. Now, re-electionist Senator Ronald De La Rosa strongly defends the Duterte administration's drug war, saying that he has no regrets over the bloody campaign and stands by his actions. Agatha Gregorio reports.
PDP Laban returns fire after President Bongbong Marcos made several remarks during the Alyansa para sa Bagong Pilipinas rally, seemingly hitting PDP Laban candidates. Senator and re-electionist Bato de la Rosa said during the party's proclamation rally on Thursday, he has no issue with having blood on his hands if it means he is protecting good people. That after the chief executive said none of his candidates have blood on them due to tokhang. Tokhang has become the trademark of the Duterte administration's drug war that's said to have left tens of thousands of people dead. The senator also commented on Mr. Marcos saying his candidates do not clap for China nor rejoice when the Philippine Coast Guard is attacked.
Willing ako magpapakamatay dyan sa West Philippines kung sabihin nila na for China ako. Willing ako magkipagira dyan sa West Philippines
And in an odd turn of events, the word suka or vinegar became somewhat of a battle cry by PDP Laban supporters. President Marcos earlier said some candidates look like they're just on an errand to buy vinegar, then got a COC.
May iba naman po siguro ay bumibili ng suka. Alam natin kung bakit napakataas ng pangunahing bilihin sa ating bansa. Yung hindi kumakain ng suka, hindi nila alam yun. Alam din natin na lubog na ang ating bansa sa korupsyon.
And while he was over 2 hours late, former President and PDP Laban Chairman Rodrigo Duterte arrived to endorse the party's 9 vets. These include De La Rosa, Senator Bongo, Congressman Rodante Marcoleta, former Executive Secretary Vic Rodriguez, Kingdom of Jesus Christ founder Apollo Kibuloy, OPM singer Jimmy Bondoc, former Interior Undersecretary J.V. Hinloc, actor Philip Salvador, and former CESA Administrator Raul Lambino. All were present except Kibuloy, who is detained facing criminal cases. During the event, Duterte took the opportunity to slam the president. The former chief executive says this administration fell short of expectations, while again saying Mr. Marcos has drug problems.
Hindi naman buang. Pero yung bisyo ng droga, long term yan. Maging si Marcos, kung maybe constant use of heroin, abot pa siguro siya ng 80. Pero pagdating sa panahon na yan, hindi na siya gumagalaw. Either nakatindig lang yan sa kwarto niya o natutulog.
The former president even suggested killing senators.
Patayin natin yung mga senador ngayon para mabakante. Kung makapatay tayo ng mga 15 na senador, pasok na tayo lahat. Pero kawawa naman. Pero nakakainis kasi yung, hindi naman lahat. Pero, sabi nga, talking of opportunities, the only way to do it is to pasabugin na lang natin yung ano.
Vice President Sara Duterte did not make it to the event, but she endorsed all senatorial candidates in a statement read out loud during the rally. Agatha Gregorio, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel, always on top.